Until a few years ago, New Mexico did not have a life without parole sentence. So a life sentence for New Mexico's murders actually meant the killers were automatically eligible for parole after 30 years. And people sentenced under that law are now coming up for parole in increasing numbers. But there is a determined effort from the very top to prevent them from getting out. Here's News 13's Tim Maestas on special assignment.
A growing list of convicted killers sentenced to life in prison trying to get out. But try convincing the governor or the chair of the state parole board.
You have some people within this group that, really basically sidestep the death penalty.
A life sentence means a life sentence. You're eligible for parole. That doesn't mean you are granted parole.
So far, 16 murder convicts serving life sentences have gone before the state parole board asking to be released. Each one was sentenced under a state law that took effect in 1980, declaring that anyone sentenced to life in prison becomes eligible for parole after 30 years. One of them is Rudolph Senna.
After being locked up for so many years in the cell, that has an effect on the human life.
He was the first to be sentenced under the 1980 law and the first to be considered for parole.
I've paid my price, yes, I do feel that.
Rudolph Senna was first up for parole back in 2010, but he was denied. After spending another 2 years here at the privately run state prison in Santa Rosa, he went before the parole board a second time this May.
But once again, the answer was no. Senna was convicted of first-degree murder after shooting up a South Valley bar in March of 1980. 3 people were shot. One of them was killed. Senna was just 29 years old. Now he's 61.
I don't want to die in prison, I want to be a productive citizen, I don't feel that I was given a fair chance.
Senna says it seems parole board members already had their minds made up. He thought he met the criteria to get out, but the parole board thought otherwise.
The decision was that he was denied parole.
Parole board chair Sandra Dietz recently came under criticism from a now former parole board member who accused her of making sure inmates serving life sentences are denied parole.
Your belief is that life in prison should mean life in prison?
Yes.
Dietz does not deny having strong opinions, but she says state law sets a high standard for granting parole, especially for first-degree murder convicts she considers some of the most dangerous in the state prison system.
There's nothing in the statute that says that the parole board has to release on parole. They said that we have to consider, and we do consider.
You are sentenced to life, and there has to be a good reason for you to be released from prison from a life sentence.
Governor Susana Martinez shares the same philosophy, recently removing the parole board member who criticized Dietz back in April.
If you have a belief that 30 years is life and you're automatically eligible to be released from prison, then that is not a shared philosophy of this administration.
Of the 16 murder convicts who've served 30 years so far, only one has been granted parole, 58-year-old Donald Whittington, and that was a disaster.
How was Mr. Whittington able to be paroled?
It was a decision of board members who felt that in the interview that he sounded like he was going to be okay.
You were not part of that decision?
No, I was not. I did not agree with that.
Whittington was allowed to stay with his sister in Texas, but Dietz says he soon got involved in fights with family members and threatening others at Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. He was arrested and brought back to New Mexico.
He didn't do very well on the outside, and we really were very lucky that there was no one injured.
Dietz says Senna was denied parole for a variety of reasons, among them the nature and seriousness of the offense that landed him in prison.
Looks like I'm doing life without parole.
Senna claims he doesn't remember the crime actually happening, and to this day he still doubts if he's actually guilty. Still, he says he has remorse.
The crime that I was charged with, I'm real remorseful for it, I wish that it never would have happened. Hey, Tim, after going on 30-some years, 33 years, I feel in my heart that, whatever happened will never happen again. Never, and that's guaranteed.
Tim Maestas, KRQE News 13.
Once they are eligible for parole, inmates serving life can go before the parole board every 2 years. Now, there's also a new life sentence here in New Mexico, and it is life without any chance of parole. That sentence can only be handed down, though, in what used to be death penalty cases.